Beloved in Christ, I want to talk to you today about stewardship. And I want to use one of my favorite biblical passages. It's from the Gospel of Mark, Mark chapter 8. But here's basically what that passage says. Jesus has been with his disciples, and he had just fed 5,000 people. And when it was done, they gathered 12 baskets full of loaves after everyone had eaten. Then they were with 4,000 people to be fed, and they fed them, and they gathered up 7 baskets of bread, and the people had eaten their fill. And so a little later, the disciples are in the boat, and they get nervous because they notice there's just one loaf of bread. And they start talking about that. And Jesus said, are you guys worried that we don't have enough bread? Let me remind you, when we fed the 5,000, how many loaves were left? And they said 12. And when they fed the 4,000, how many loaves were left? And they said 7. And he said, and you're still worried? We don't have enough bread? I love that. I mean, they were with Jesus. But how quickly they moved from eyewitnesses to God's abundance to the scarcity of we don't have enough, right in front of the one who had just fed all these people. But let's not be too hard on the disciples. I think sometimes we too can fall into the idea that there's not enough. As we look at our strategic plan, we have a noble vision. It's a vision that says status quo in the way of Jesus is not good enough. We want to grow our ministry. We want a premier youth and family ministry, and we want a ministry which can embrace our members, our community, and serve around the world and keep growing. And to do that, we believe that we need 2 pastors to multiply the gifts of this congregation into the bold mission that our strategic plan calls for. And there are some caveats about that. We look at the present giving of our congregation and the trend since the pandemic began, and it's easy enough to say because it's true. Right now, we don't have enough bread to do this. I don't want to worry about whether we have enough bread. I know you believe that God is not holding out on us, that God will give us what we need to do what God has called us to do. So instead, I would rather talk about our relationship to God and our gratitude for our church and recommit ourselves to that, and then see where and what happens in terms of having enough bread to do what we're called to do. Earlier in my ministry, I used to be a little reluctant to talk about financial support. It seemed kind of crude to do so. When I had to, it was low-key and very tentative. No longer. For a long time, I've not been ashamed to talk about stewardship. I'm not ashamed to ask for your support, because I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, in which you and I have been redeemed and set free from sin and death. I'm not ashamed of our beloved church or its people or its programs and the tremendous influence our parish has on the quality of life of our members and community. And I am not ashamed to ask you with a head held high to endorse this ministry of ours by your fair share of money, time, and talent. Biblical stewardship doesn't focus just on money or budgets or comparing who gives how much. What God teaches about stewardship in His Word, He talks to us about our very lives and how they will be spent. He talks about our many gifts, and He makes us promises. There will always be enough. Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. And then God in Christ died for us and rose again and gave us our lives back as a gift to be used in praise and thanksgiving to God and neighbor. Over the years, I've really tried to listen to young people, to youth, high school age, college, confirmation, 7th and 8th grade, and I always ask them, what do you expect from your church? What are you looking for? And I've copied some of those down word for word. Here are some of the things over the years young people have told me. I want to belong to a church which is straight with me, doesn't lie to me, and tells me what it expects of me. Someone else. I want to participate in a church with a vision that sets goals for itself in which I can see myself participate. Another. I want to belong to a church that has life in it. I don't want to go to a funeral every Sunday morning. I don't think there's any danger of that at St. Luke with our music and vibrant community, by the way. And someone else. I want to belong to a church that's accessible. I don't often feel that my talents are wanted. I want to belong to a church that will use me. Well, beloved, at St. Luke's, we are that church. On Sunday morning, young people singing, ringing bells, young people participating, helping with Sunday school. One young person, 15 years old, looked up Lutheran on the internet because she wanted to choose a church to go to, and has been coming to us for several months now, happy to be with St. Luke. And this past Sunday, she was welcomed by other young people at our potluck dinner. That church is worth our time, our effort, our stewardship. Beloved, in our church, we are in the boat with Jesus. We have seen Jesus over the years feed the 5,000, feed the 4,000, sustain each of us in our walk of faith, create and sustain us and nurture us through a pandemic. And now here we are reconnecting in Christ. There's enough bread because God in Christ has given you and me our lives back to serve that God and our neighbor through our beloved St. Luke's.